you also have to accept that you have to become friends with failure. You just have to. Failure is a part of it. Business. I know so much of your podcast and your audience is about winning. Finding winning is so important because business is not a game that you win an absolute thing, because as soon as you have a success, you better come up with another success. You better come up with another success or the tiger will eat you. Winning is being a person that continues to push forward. That is what winning is.
They're recognizing that you didn't hit the goal, right? And we do this with our team a lot. So we have our quarterly, we call them rocks. They're these sprint goals for the quarter. And when we don't hit it, we sit down with the team and we confront the fact that we did not hit the goal. And just like Adam is saying, it's that trust that the team now has in you and then, your stakeholders, people that you're surrounded by, but also the lessons learned or the lessons that you pull from the failure, right? And I feel like if you don't recognize it, you're actually missing out on a lot of the lessons learned by not recognizing it. So I love that.
Inefficiency that a business can have and they don't know they have is somebody who's been around for 7-8 years and 3 years ago they had checked out. But they know how to push the buttons enough to get something, but they're not there.
Get it done. Yeah.
Yes. And you don't want that. And so you got to be honest and you got to be able to say, look, there's a bunch of people who are checking to see what they want.
Welcome to the Takeover with Tim and Cindy, where we show you how to dominate every area of life and business. Let's get winning.
Welcome back to the Takeover. Ladies and gents, one of my favorite topics of all time to speak about, read about, learn about is the topic of leadership. And why it is one of my favorite topics is simply because I believe very strongly that leadership can make or break organizations, but even on a personal level, who are you being led by? Having an amazing leader in your corner can completely change the trajectory of your life and of your business. So I'm excited to have this guest with us today who is no stranger to exceptional leadership. Not only is he the CEO and president of the World Poker Tour, he has won several awards within the industry. And what I'm most excited about diving into with our guest is this topic of leadership, because he has one of the longest standing tenures of an executive in the industry of poker, which I think is phenomenal. But also he has very interesting perspectives and philosophies around leadership. So I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Adam Pliska. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes. So we're going to dive into this topic of leadership today. I want to start at the beginning. Did you know you wanted to be a leader from when you were a kid?
One aspect I did. As a kid, my parents they had the World Book encyclopedias. And so I would take them down at night when I was a little kid and I would draw leaders, and draw famous people of history. And I loved that. I was a bit enamored by it. But I also remember at a very early age, I had done a lot in Boy Scouting and things like that, which actually helped me quite a bit about understanding leadership at the early age. But I remember this pressing thought, which was, I don't know how adults be adults, because as a kid, I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm so sensitive. I'm so emotional that I would cry at these things that adults have to do. And I do remember this dichotomy of this, I want to be in this position and I want to be able to do things that impact people and impact things, but I didn't know how I was going to do it because it just seemed like so much pressure or so much, things. And, that's from a perspective of a young person.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How did you then start on that track to leadership?
Well, I do think early on, my parents were wonderful and they were very open to the path that I wanted to explore. And I did things like sports, which I wasn't particularly good at, but they showed up all of the time and you learn a lot about leadership, not because you're a leader, but because you learn what a good leader is and who the people you want to follow and not. And even though it was very clear that I was not going to win the award other than mom who brought the best sliced oranges, there's that. But when I was in scouting, I think in the year I was the youngest person to. There's the top rank, which is Eagle Scout. I was the youngest person to achieve that in the U.S. And so I'm 12, 13 years old, and I'm managing kids who are 17 and going to be 18 years old. And so that comes with a lot of challenges and a lot of personal dynamics. And you learn that leadership is a lot more than just knowing things. It's about your relationship with other people, which is at the heart of everything.
On that topic of relationships with other people, you've had mentors in your life, and I've read your story. I've been very intrigued by specific mentors in your life that I feel were pivotal in kind of getting you to where you are today. So tell us a little bit more about those mentors in your life, those leaders that you had to look up to that then kind of shaped your journey.
Sure. I mean, a lot of the mentors in life were, of course, when you're young, you don't know why you're being mentored. Later on, maybe, in your 20s, you say, I want a mentor who can teach me X. But when you're younger, you just want to be like someone. And that's okay. That's okay. If you don't need a specific mentor, I absolutely believe it's okay to say that person is living their life the way that I want to live. And so I had wonderful mentors, whether it was teachers or that helped me, encouraged me to do my business. I had one drama teacher who helped me start my business when I was in high school. But then, when I was very young, I took a class at a community college. I was still in high school, but it was a community college class. And they were doing a tribute to a famous producer who had produced many, many shows. At the time, he was producing Lassie, the TV show Lassie. And so they invited me, and to save the $12 of getting in, I agreed to be an usher. And so I was bringing people backstage, and one of the people on the show was Dee Wallace Stone, who was the mother on E.T. So I brought her backstage, and here's this producer and all these actors and all these people that were on the show, and they were in the green room. And I remember thinking this was exactly the opposite of some people's perception of Hollywood, right? It wasn't cheesy people with, slimy people over in the corner talking. This was like a family environment, and everyone was having fun. And I so wanted to be a part of that. And so that day I asked some questions in the Q&A session. And then my job afterwards was to tell the people to move along as they were getting the signatures. And he came up and he said, your question was really smart. And I really appreciate that. And as he was walking away, I said, excuse me, I'm with the school newspaper. Is there any way I could come in and interview you? And he was at Universal Studios. And he gave me a card. And, months of calling, I finally get in. And his assistant had an assistant. And so I finally get in. And on that day, I remember there was Leonardo DiCaprio had been there because he was doing something on there, and they were still doing Charles in Charge, and Lassie's still filming. And I get in, and he says to me, okay, what can I do for you? And I said, if you could answer my questions here that I have on my yellow pad. And mind you, I couldn't even drive. My dad was outside. My dad had driven me up from Orange County to LA. And he said, stop me. And he said, I don't want to offend you. If I'm correct, let me know. And if not, I apologize. But I have a feeling that you weren't with a school and newspaper. You just wanted to get in here and make a connection. If that's the case, just tell me what you want and be honest. And I said, that's it. I just want to work in a great environment. And he became my mentor, 7.5 years of working together at Universal and Castle Rock and many shows together. And more than that, he was a mentor in life. He was just a wonderful man. His name is Al Burton. And between him and Norman Lear, who passed away at 100 years old and stuff, these were really people who shaped the way that I wanted to create community around me.
That's amazing. It's so funny that you recognize that you actually weren't with the school newspaper, but you were honest, and that honesty opened the door to that kind of relationship that you had with him.
Yes, and I am a very big believer of that now. I mean, he said, it's funny, he said, I recognized it because I had done the same thing with Frank Sinatra. And I went in there and I said, I have an interview, and I went in there and he ended up producing Frank Sinatra and a number of things. But wow. I do believe we're in such an age of marketing, right? Because now social media allows everyone to be their own branding agent. And there's nothing wrong with that if branding means educating. But if branding means polishing things should not be polished. eventually it's going to catch up to you. And
Yeah.
so we now live in a world where when someone is authentic, we feel it, we gravitate to it, even if there's a rough edge here and there or something, because we feel safe. We feel
Yeah.
like that marketing should not be a deception. If marketing is education, hey, I have something, I know it's something that if I take a little bit of your mental real estate, I think you might want to think about, and it might help you. That's great. But when marketing is about merely playing to your emotional triggers, so you take an action that you would otherwise not do, that's just not sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such good advice. Such good advice. Let's pivot to now your work with the World Poker Tour. Let's talk about how did you get there? You are the longest standing CEO. Am I correct in saying that statement?
Yeah, it's probably in the gaming industry in general. I've been around for 22 years here. It says, one of them definitely.
That's phenomenal. What led to that? How did you get there? And then what led to you being longest standing CEO? Because I mean, the average tenure of a CEO is around 7 years, give or take.
Yeah.
You're pushing towards 2 decades.
Yeah, it's funny because as I was going from my original position and I was coming to lead, a guy told me, he said, the average tenure of someone in the gaming industry as a CEO is 2 years, 2.5 years. And I remember that, but I don't think that was ever my focus. How did I get there? I was a lawyer, I had a legal background, and because I was a TV producer, obviously that my work with Albertan led me to be a TV producer. Long story short, I had a girlfriend at the time who wanted to leave, wanted to go to Berkeley. I said, if you go to Berkeley, I'll go to Berkeley. I just left my thing and I went there and I got a law degree, which I thought if I go back to TV, at least I would understand all these things that people kept talking about when the contracts came. And so I did. I had been hired to be the IP counsel at the Senate Judiciary Committee of the U.S. Senate. And I got the job. I absolutely got the job. And my friend who had produced was also a mentee of Albert, had created this thing called the World Poker Tour. And we talked about me coming in while I was waiting to move to DC for a few weeks to, help clear up some legal things and be helpful. And I did, and I just love this entrepreneurial company that was just, it was nothing. It was hardly, just been on the air, and nobody knows what tomorrow is going to bring. And everybody's thoughts quickly go from thoughts into action. And I had to make a choice. And that choice was, now, do I take my job that would be a prestigious job in DC, or do I join this company? And they wanted to go public. A few months later, they wanted to go public. Nobody had ever heard of a poker company going public. It didn't exist at that time. I don't know. Sometimes you get a feeling and you like it might not sound rational because you're going from what feels like a solid way forward and a guaranteed way forward to you're now going into the abyss. And I'm sure your audience recognizes that feeling as entrepreneurs.
Yes.
But why do they continue? Why do entrepreneurs continue when they have options that are others? And I think it's because they know that it's deceptive to think that the safe path is safe. It's only safe if you have the emotional and mental constitution to want to do that forever. If you don't, and you desire that I'm making my own path, I'm my own pioneer, I will, there's a lot of variables, that you will go away. I think that somebody once told me when I graduated at Berkeley from law school, and somebody once said that the average tenure of a lawyer after they graduate was about 5 years. So they spend 3 years going to a major university. It guarantees they're going to get a great position or whatever it is. And 5 years later, they're not there. Why?
Wow.
It doesn't mean they didn't have great careers. The law is a great background to have, and it teaches you a lot. They just went on to other things. And that's because down deep, there's something calling. And I'm sure your audience knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you decided to go the route of, I'm going to join the World Poker Tour. You started off in the legal department. Is that right?
Yeah, I was the general counsel. So I was they had a legal person.
And how did the door for CEO open up?
Well, I'm going to give you two answers to that question. One is the simple answer, which is eventually we went to sell the company, and Steve, my friend, went on to retire, and I went on to take on the company. That's the more simple part of the story. But I think what would be more interesting to your audience is why me? Right?
Yes.
Why did the lawyer who did not play poker end up running one of the largest gaming brands in the world? Like, well, how did that happen? And part of it was my own incompetence, and what I mean by that is there are things that you're good at and there are things that we're bad at. I'm a very big believer that we should look at the things we're bad at and try to improve them, because that's where we can oftentimes get a lot of gains. But you need to be very aware of what it is that you're good at and where you're going to be able to move the dial. And there was lots of, in law, there's a lot of regulatory things and administrative things and other things that keep coming. And you can be brilliant at that. And there's people who are so great. They're so organized at it, but it will take all of your time. And I'm not. My mind wants to think about businesses and other things, and I want to be entrepreneurial. And so we very quickly had to get another lawyer to be able to do those things. Well, that freed up more time for me to do business. The other thing is I've had 3 amazing assistants. I'm so close to my assistant. My assistant knows things about me. This is not like, hey, what do you want to do? I'll do it. That person knows 80% of it's like ChatGPT who knew all about you. They could do those things. Well, I need that. Some people don't need it, or they just need an assistant to go and do a task. I need it to clear mind space. So I had to get that. So I've had multiple assistants that were so close. On one hand, they got to be kind of an executive. They got to make a lot of the choices. And many times I just follow what they tell me I'm going to be doing. But it freed me up. And so with all of this freedom, what did I do? I was talking about with Steve as the CEO, I was talking about where the business can go and what we can do. I could have done my very best and been taken into areas that I wouldn't have loved all of the time, because, but there are people who are great at organization and all these kinds of things. But instead, it freed me up on time to do and think of the bigger pictures. And time is the greatest commodity here. I mean, that's what you need to learn is like, where do you want to shift your time? We all say it, but ask yourself today, did you get up? How much of your life was devoted to the things you want in your life? There are many times, and people will know this, that they're working in a business and, they say, oh, I have this side business. I'm going to do this business as a part-time business because I really want to do what I want. And what they find out is 80-90% of the thing is the business, because they're too tired afterwards.
Yes.
That time assessment is essential. And I just got very fortunate because I was with supportive people. Steve was very supportive. I found people who allowed me to do that. They excelled what they did and allowed me to do what I wanted to do.
I want to highlight something there that you mentioned, which is the topic of time management. It's not only your ability to delegate, right? To recognize, hey, what is on my plate that I should not be doing? Delegating that out to somebody who would probably really enjoy that work, so that you could focus on your highest leverage activities or things that would really move you forward in your career. And we talk about this a lot on the show, which is assessing where your time is going and outsourcing or delegating everything else so that you can focus on those highest leverage activities.
Absolutely. I mean, it's essential. And one of the internal biases that we have to discard is the fact that why don't we delegate? Right? It seems silly. I've seen a lot of smart people stifle their careers by not delegating. So why don't they do it? Well, to me, there's 2 buckets of why that I've seen. One is the control aspect, the fact that you need to control absolutely everything, and that will destroy you in a long time. People who have control issues must just be going insane with all this artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is not coming after low-end stuff. I was just thinking last night, God, if I was a lawyer and when I came back and said, find a case that proves this point, that was everything. And you were considered brilliant if you came up with that. This machine's going to be able to do that. Control is one thing. The second one is a much easier thing when you realize it, which is we tend to think the things that we don't do are horrible things or just crappy things. And so we think no one else we're dumping it on someone else. No, there are people, they wake up every day and they say, wow, I control this better than anyone. I know I can keep this ship running. I go back to my assistant, like he runs this ship so much better than I could do, even if I dedicated 100%. I'm blown away. I'm in admiration of him. You've got to get rid of this idea that if you don't want to do it, somebody else doesn't want to do it. Somebody else can't find value and esteem in doing it because they can.
Oh, absolutely. I want to hammer home that topic because we talk about it so much on the show, which is just it's delegation, it's managing your time. And you're hearing this from a very high level leader. How big is your team now, Adam? How big is the company?
The company is worldwide, but it probably is less people than most people think. There's about 100 people. And then when there's production, there's probably 50 other people who come and maybe, 20 consultants here and there. And,
okay, so 100 to 150 around.
Yeah.
He's telling you that time management is one of the biggest things. So take note of that, ladies and gents. That's
absolutely right.
So Adam, you have a history of setting stretch goals for the company. What is the philosophy around setting stretch goals? And a follow-up question is, when your team does not hit the stretch goal, what do you do?
It's a great question because ultimately we have these biases that tell us if I continue to do what I'm expected to do, I'll be safe. And the truth is, you have a tiger behind you all the time. And the good news is the tiger is a little slow and he's eaten a lot and he's a little slow. The bad news is if the tiger catches you, the tiger will eat you. And so you have to continue to be pressing forward. You have to continue to do things. One of the biggest mistakes that I see is I get pitched a lot of things all the time that are, I'm going to go back to my TV days. People will say, it's a mix of this show, and it's come together. And that can work, but you also have to remember that your customer doesn't know everything that they want yet. They're looking to you to help them figure out. My good friend, Jose Andres, I saw him yesterday as a chef. He has a lab in Washington, D.C., where they're always creating foods. They're creating foods. That means they're mixing things, and some things taste bad and some things taste good. Then they come up with these things, and you don't know that you want it until they find it and they've developed it, and then they put it in front of you. And so you have an obligation to never become complacent and to be trying things. That has some upsides and the downside. The upside is when it works, everybody will be like, that's great. And they could, of course, success is whatever they say, the success has many fathers and, failure has none. But you also have to accept that you have to become friends with failure. You just have to. Failure is a part of it. I know so much of your podcast and your audience is about winning. Defining winning is so important because business is not a game that you win an absolute thing, because as soon as you have a success, you better come up with another success. You better come up with another success or the tiger will eat you. Winning is being a person that continues to push forward. That is what winning is. What I see wrong in failure is bad marketing. There's a failure and people come back and they say, they blame it on something else. It was raining that day, or it was we made a very big stretch goal in December. We had put a $15 million guarantee on a tournament 2 years ago. We put a $40 million guarantee on that tournament last year. Wow. Now, remarkably, we got to $38 million.
Wow.
But it's a little short. So you could say, wow, you've increased by 40% more people came to the event. It's amazing. So what was happening when it became apparent to me that could happen is I called our PR person and I said, we had 50 press people there. I said, assemble them. I want to make a statement. And we got everybody together and I went in as soon as the prize pool was done. And I said, I brought them together to say, we did not make the guarantee. We're not going to make the guarantee. We said it was 40 and we didn't. We tried. And do I regret it? So I opened the question, do I regret it? I don't regret it at all because we're going forward. I have never received more positive response from press people because we all know how that is. We all know when we're trying and, we don't get the marketing thing to go, oh, they smashed the thing, but we're trying it, but we have made a difference. And it's still, and to just face it, is so empowering. And now, of course, it makes you want to do it again. It makes you want to go and take risks because people know I can trust you. I can trust that you're going to go forward. You're not going to just sit there trying to build a reputation. You're going to be there to really, you care about this business and going forward.
So good. One of the things that I love about that is the recognizing that you didn't hit the goal, right? And we do this with our
Yeah,
team a lot. So we have our quarterly, we call them rocks. They're these sprint goals for the quarter. And when we don't hit it, we sit down with the team and we confront the fact that we did not hit the goal. And just like Adam is saying, it's that trust that the team now has in you and then, your stakeholders, people that you're surrounded by, but also the lessons learned or the lessons that you pull from
absolutely.
the failure, right? And I feel like if you don't recognize it, you're actually missing out on a lot of the lessons learned by not
Yes.
recognizing it. So I love that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, as entrepreneurs, our instinct is often to think that our competitor is the person who offers the product most like ours. And I can assure you that that is not your biggest competitor. The biggest competitor is number one, is people's real estate in their head. I mean, I don't care what product you're offering, what product your audience is offering. The issue is not someone else is offering something. The issue is that the customer has a million things they can do. If you sell jackets, yes, there's a million other people who sell jackets. But the issue is you have to tell me that I want to be in a world where jackets are important to me. And I want to, in a year's time, I should dedicate 90 minutes to thinking about jackets and what I'm going to buy. Because if I don't, that will go away. And the second part is this, the second demon out there that comes far above your other direct quote unquote competitor is not learning from your errors. I understand it. I do understand it. When we fail in a business or in a relationship or in anything, the instinct is to nurture and to make ourselves feel better. And how do we do it? We say, well, it was cloudy today, or this didn't happen, or whatever. And, if you were there under different circumstances, and it's a very well intended, but you learn nothing from it. You learn nothing from it. What you learn from is creating an environment, it sounds like that you're doing, where you say, number one, and we do this at the World Poker Tour. You're safe. First of all, you're safe. Our job is not to kick somebody off the raft. Our job is to get from one side of the stream to the next. Now let's be really honest with each other. And so we have the thing where we really applaud people when they get on our management call and they go, oh my God, I screwed up. And someone says, oh, I see that. No, you don't see how bad I screwed up. I screwed up like this. And I also didn't do that. We actually celebrate that because that's where we learn. Yeah. That's where we learn. And you can only do that if you're comfortable in yourself and you're safe with your team.
That's so good. There are two values that I think of, the two words that come to mind. It's candor, right? The ability to be candid and say, hey, I messed up and this didn't go well. But the second too is the culture of the company that you are bringing people into in the World Poker Tour. So how have you created that kind of culture or environment where it is okay for somebody to say, hey, I messed up, and still feel safe and still feel like I could show up for work and perform at my best and not feel like I'm on the chopping block if I mess up?
I'm going to go back to when I was the general counsel, and I used to ask, when Steve was the CEO, I used to ask if I could do the firing when there was firing, because I think I'm very good at firing. And what I mean by that is, under the unfortunate times when you have to part ways, I am very philosophical. So I don't believe that your life is not valued, that you're not going to make a contribution to this world because you're not the right fit for the World Poker Tour, right? And why firings are so bad is because we live in a passive-aggressive culture where if you fire someone, it's like, you've done something wrong. I'm in one position. You're the next position. By the way, don't go to your office. We're going to send you all of this stuff, all of this kind of thing. Yeah. And if you just sit back to human psychology, we all want to feel that we're valuable, not in the World Poker Tour, in life. So if you're not performing over and over, it's probably not a sign that you're not capable. It's a sign that your resources are being deployed wrong for society. And so letting people know that, hey, you need this for you. You need to be going out and adjusting this for you is very important. And so when you ask, what do we do to create the culture. It's trying to avoid as much politics and ego and the acceptance that we're all valuable. And if we find what we do and we do it right, we all can make a contribution that we can be valued in. And that means, as the head of the company, I don't pretend that I know more about putting up table structures than, I got our executive tour director or something. I don't have to be. The one thing that's wonderful about not being a founder, and I'm going to give this advice because I know there's a lot of founders who are listening to your podcast, simply because you are a founder does not mean that you have to burden your heart with the idea that you have to have known all the answers. You don't. In fact, the people who are the best, and what I have seen, are the people who say, yeah, I certainly, they just accept someone's got to run the company. And I will have these strengths and I will have these blind spots and they all have this weakness. And when you do that, your team feels that they're experts. As I always say, I have 7 department heads that respond to me. They're all CEOs of their own business. I'm the bee that comes around between them, and but they're the CEOs of their own business. And I do think that's important.
I agree with so many of your philosophies around leadership, because I'm the same with my team. I always say I hire people smarter than me. I'm not the smartest person in the room by any means. And I think when you can see your team in that light, that they're experts, that they are in that role for a reason, and to give them that autonomy to really operate like a CEO and executive in their space, it's really powerful, that level of autonomy.
I do say to the team, I say, you don't have to like the people you work with, but you do have to love them. And I mean it. You have to care.
Yeah.
We all have families, and there's always some strange person in the family that we're just like, oh my gosh, the holidays, they come by. Where's that person?
There goes that uncle.
And there's that uncle. But if the person got in trouble or whatever, I don't want them to. I want them to be okay. And so infusing an ethos of caring, even if you have to be very honest with each other and say, I don't like the way that you're doing whatever, but still having a base of caring, it helps a lot.
So good. I call that candor with kindness. You can be candid straight up when somebody does something wrong, but it's from a place of care and love, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
You mentioned the importance of maintaining a startup mentality. So you say World Poker Tour is around 100 to 150 teammates. How do you all maintain that startup mentality even at that size?
Yes. Well, if you don't maintain, it's more important now than ever to maintain a startup mentality. For the history, I love to read historical business books. And from what I can tell, everybody has always started an historical business book with, in this fast moving times, and that goes back 100 years. People, technology, it's good. But I actually do believe there is something a little different now, which is before, what would normally happen is the lower ends of the business are always being commoditized. You can always find somebody to do something cheaper. You can outsource to a different country. You can do it. And those things have historically been, as technology develops. And where we see is the people on the top, they have been isolated in this little moat because they know the recipe. And as long as they keep outsourcing and they keep commoditizing the bottom, and they'll keep things efficient. We now, as I was evidencing by AI example earlier, live in a world where the top can change tomorrow. A lot of high-end actors, and they're sitting here going, wait a minute, someone could do a 3D avatar of my body, take my voice and my mannerisms and recreate me in a thing. To some people, that is horrifying. But it's reality. And so it is so important that your listeners, not the employees, not just the employees or the people coming in, but the founders or whatever, always in a startup mentality, because the world is changing all the time. Now, you might say, oh, that sounds depressing. My God, if it's changing, I could lose my business and investment tomorrow. As artificial intelligence progresses, what is our role? What is it that we do? And to me, what it is that we are dedicated stewards. So if you produce, you produce software. Let's say you just produce software. One of your listeners comes up with a great piece of software. You're no longer just the creative person who came up with a brilliant piece of software. You must become the steward of that type of software. So when the changes come and someone wants something else, they say, hey, tell me what's going on in the field. What's changing? What should I have? And you're responsible for being the person like, I'm dedicating my time to understanding not only what I have and giving you what I want, what's changing in the field, what's happening. And if you do that, you'll have a career for the rest of your life.
So good. Absolutely. I agree. If you're not staying apprised with changes in the industry and software, things like AI, you are for sure going to be left behind. And we think about just the long-term sustainability of businesses today, owners, founders, executives. It is staying up with the changes that are happening. And I know AI is a very hot topic, and we've chatted a lot about it on the show. And it's just getting started with it. Start doing research if you haven't yet. And if you're not thinking about or adopting the technology in some form of another, let this be the kind of catapult to get you started on that track today, because you're hearing it straight from Adam as well. Okay, so the majority of our listeners, as you know, entrepreneurs, very early stage, and we kind of mentioned firing a little bit, hiring, bringing on new talent. Mm-hmm. When I see the landscape of the workforce today, and we do a lot of hiring internally at Pima as well, we'll have teammates come in, and there's so many other opportunities that open up around them. And you may have like the average tenure be about 1 to 2 years in kind of the workforce and what we're seeing today.
Yeah.
So how do you both attract the right talent and keep them as, you know, things are shifting so much in the global workforce?
It's such a good topic that you're bringing that up to your listeners, because we do live in a time, there are many opportunities for younger people. People will just throw money, and so they'll just go to one place to the next. And a lot of this is accepting the reality and identifying very early on, honestly, the relationship that you have with the employee. I don't mind at all that there are a group of young people who haven't figured out what they want to do. They don't know if they like this. And so you need to work that into your attrition system. There's always someone who's retiring. There's always someone and you need to say there's going to be 10 people who come in. Of those 10 people, 3 people are going to go to the next stage. Maybe 7 of them go find other jobs or whatever it is after, 4 or 5 years. Then 3 of them advance. And then of that one person advances. And you have to have a good sense of that. You got to be very honest and let people know that they can be honest. One thing that I used to do is tell people, if you worked for me for a year and you are thinking about exploring another job, as long as you worked for me for a year and you were honest and you did a good job, as long as you get your work done, can you call other companies and apply for other jobs? You can have me tell them about my experience with you while you're still working here.
Wow.
The worst inefficiency that a business can have, and they don't know they have, is somebody who's been around for 7, 8 years, and 3 years ago they had checked out.
Yes.
But they know how to push the buttons enough to get something, but they're not there.
Get it done. Yeah.
Yes, and you don't want that. And so you got to be honest, and you got to be able to say, look, there's a bunch of people who are checking to see what they want. Now, I will say this to young people who are serial 1 years persons. Somebody recently told me about, going from career to career to career. And you can you can cobble along money at that point. But I have to tell you, when I look back, if everything stopped today, I'll have said I did something. I made an impact in something. And you don't get that by staying in any company for 2 years. You get a very short impact. You made a little bit. You have to dedicate yourself to something in life. It doesn't have to be work, by the way, but it has to be something, because if not, you're going to be waking up at 50 going, what did I waste my time on?
Wow. That's such good advice. I'm like taking down notes, because this is so good. I'm going to use that advice in our team as well. Like, if you've been with us for a year, kindly let me know, because that is one of the most difficult things, is when an employee leaves out of nowhere and you had no idea. But just opening those lines of communication for, if you are exploring other opportunities, let me know. I love that. Let's kind of turn the gears a little bit. I want to talk about one of the most challenging things that has happened to you in leadership. Maybe it's a challenging decision that you've had to make, something challenging within the company. Walk us through one of those challenges and how you overcame it.
Yeah, so there will be very big challenges throughout the year. And many of those challenges will become from if you're successful. People want to replicate that. And by very nature, by very definition, if you, yeah, I always find it funny when somebody sends me a note saying someone is copying something that we did. Well, of course they are. That is what's going to happen. I say every 5 years, there is a dramatic shift in a business model. I mean, when the World Poker Tour started, it was making 87% of its money from television license fees. It blew up. I mean, the show just blew up, and all the online gaming sites were paying the World Poker Tour to be on until the online gaming sites figured out, wait, it's cheaper for us to just produce TV and give it away for free. So almost overnight, television went for free. Now, if that was 87% of your revenues, what do? I often say I would rather hire, I'm not saying I wouldn't hire, but in my experience, I would rather hire, my predisposition is to hire a small business owner or a single mom over a Harvard MBA. And I will tell you why. It's because I have known single moms who don't sit there and their job is, I've got to get it done. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how you raise a kid and go take a shower and the person's outside or whatever. But they figure it out. They just figure it out. I don't know how we're going to eat. I don't know how we're going to afford school. They just figure it out. And same with small business owners. They just figure it out. That is the lesson to take. If you don't think as a person listening to this podcast that your job is not a professional, I'll figure it outer, you're in the wrong podcast. You're in the wrong business. Go work for a big corporation, and if something gets bad, someone else will figure it out and you'll see if you have a job. But that's our job.
Oh, good. So good. The Takeover, as you mentioned, is all about winning in life and business. So Adam, what does the word winning mean to you?
Yeah, one of the people that I've always looked up to is Warren Buffett. I just went to the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders conference, and he speaks a lot about the inner scorecard. There are people who are outer scorecard people and inner scorecard people. And outer scorecard people are people who judge their success by what other people are judging. And inner scorecard is what you're internally judging. Now, what that requires is you to know yourself and to know the parameters of what winning actually means to you. By the way, I do have one disagreement with him. One thing that Warren Buffett says also is that, as his great maxim, which is price is what you pay and value is what you get. A price for a cell phone, but the value is important to that cell phone for you in your life. But he also said, and I agree with that, that reputation, he puts a lot about reputation, because reputation, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to lose it. Where I have a subtle disagreement is the focus on reputation, because I know a lot of people, when they're not doing well, they're good marketers and they can have a good reputation. To me, I would make this analogy to him. Reputation is price. It is what people are charging. It's what the people think of you at any given time. They might not know the truth. Character is value. Wow. The character of who you want to be. And so you ask me, what is winning to me? Winning to me is, am I working, doing my job at the World Poker Tour or anything else, in line, judged against the character of person that I want to become over time? And so to me, being decent, being honest, being competitive, being diligent, these are parts that build a character. But you may know that. Maybe you read a resume. I can make a resume and you could go, oh, you're fantastic or whatever. Only I know it. Only I know if I'm truly winning or not. And that takes a lot of self-reflection. And that's why I think business is great. Business is the best spiritual exercise of your life.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Wow. I think that is one of the most profound answers to that question that I've ever heard. And on a second note to that, I've had a lot of leaders that I've looked up to. I read a lot of books as well. And there's a lot of famous people out there that I'm like, I want to be that kind of leader. And just after today's conversation and learning more about your leadership style and the way that you view things, you're one of those for me. I feel like I want to be the kind of leader that you are. So thank you so much for all the wisdom that you've imparted on our audience and on me, because I was receiving it all as well. And I'm really excited about learning more about you, but also what the listeners are going to get out of this conversation. So
yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I love being in environments like this. I mean, people listening to this podcast are the people who are going to be the architects of our tomorrows, and so the fact that they care about these things is a good sign for our tomorrow.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you want to share where people can learn more about the World Poker Tour?
Sure. You can go to wpt.com. There's plenty easy to remember. And we have information there. We have events in 5 continents all over, things going on, and or go onto the Instagram. We all have Instagram, whatever platform you want. But we'd love to have anyone come and have them see up close what we do.
Fantastic. This was Cindy with The Takeover, ladies and gents. And remember, domination is not a destination. It's a way of life. Stay winning.